Welcome back, everyone, to another Altered TCG week in review of the tournament scene, brought to you by A Hero's Guide to Asgartha. So, first of all, let's go through what happened at AWOL on Monday. 120 players. We're seeing representation, as has been the case in all weeks of AWOL, of the highest amount of players being played at one time. And this week it was taken out by Traced and Rossum, piloted by DQ Aganman. One thing you'll see as we go through this recap is a huge resurgence in Traced and Rossum with the release of Whispers from the Maze. Not just that, but as people have gotten comfortable in using this Axiom hero once again. So the main thing to look at in their deck is, while there is a bag out bag, I would consider this deck quite traditional in using Haven, Bravos, Bastion, Keelon cylinders to boost their things and trying to get everything possible into their reserve quickly, resupplying like crazy, using Hooked as an advantage to draw card and also draw cards and also move things, but they are also including Avalanche for those matchups that are a little bit more difficult for them. Grems, as we can see, is becoming a part of a stable, as well as his Vike, Energy Pioneer, allowing them to be able to play cards that are exhausted from their reserve. So let's have a look at the uniques that have been played. So by DQ Aganman, the pilot of this winning deck. So 1-2 for an Ada Lovelace for 2-1-1 in stats, and when played from reserve, you may put a card from your hand in reserve. If it's a permanent, I gain 1 boost for each card in each player's reserve. Pretty simple, but also very, very good if you're able to get that permanent. And as we saw earlier, they have a few permanents, really, Bug Out Bag being the main one, and Keelon Cylinder and the Bravos Bastion. So looking forward to getting that, looking to try to get that benefit for the additional boosts. The second one of their uniques that they used was 3 Little Pigs, 3-2 for 3-3-2. And if you control 2 or more landmarks your characters have when played from reserve, I gain 1 boost. Also very, very useful for them. And the last one is an Athena, 5-2 for 3-3-3. Played from anywhere, I gain 1 boost for each card in your reserve. And when played from reserve, if you control 2 or more landmarks, I lose fleeting. In many cases, given you have got a selection of 5, so 2 Keelon Cylinders and 3 Haven Bravos Bastions, you should be able to get that and recur this card over and over again. 2 resources for 3-3-3 in stats. And then on top of that, you also gain a boost for each card in your reserve you may have when this played. So you'd be the first card that you'd play out. Really good job. Very different kind of uniques than what I've seen being used in Traced and Rossum. But it worked for DQ Aganman. And congratulations for winning the most difficult of all the tournaments that are being played, given the amount of players that play on the European tournament on Monday. The second player that went undefeated in this tournament was Temper de la Neige, also going 6-0 using Afarnas and Senka. Is this something that we're going to see constantly? Afarnas and Senka, and now Traced and Rossum, taking place of Sigismar, which was traditionally always up there with Afarnas. Temper de la Neige had what I would call a very, very much spell-heavy deck, cheap deck, in the sense of what they've got. 23 spells, 13 characters, and of course the Nylon Withered Tree, which is now a staple in all Afarnas builds from what I've seen recently. Nothing out of the ordinary here. We're seeing a lot more in the use of anchored characters and the Spindle Harvesters, the Sneezer Shroom, and what they have got is 1 Flamel, so probably their most expensive card, and that is being used to be able to siphon a spell back to hand. Now, I'll say this, given the nerf and also the mid-season patch has come out, Afarnas' ability to use a lot of these resources, these 1-cost spells, is going to be altered in 2 weeks' time, purely because now that if they ever play a spell that costs 1, it gains fleeting. So will we see a change in the way that this build occurs? Will we add the landmark that allows you to play a spell and lose fleeting when it's been used, potentially. We'll see how these Aphanis players tinker with their decks over the next few weeks as they continue to win the tournaments or play the tournaments with their favorite heroes. So let's have a look at Temper Delaneige's uniques. So they had 2 Muna Caregivers. The first one is 2-1 for a 1/0/1. At dusk, if I have 1 or more boosts, you may return a card other than me from your reserve to your hand. And when I leave the expedition zone, if you control 1 or more landmarks, you may return a spell from your reserve to your hand. So this is basically twice. You'll be able to return 2 spells every time this card gets played or at the end of the day. And they also have a quick ability, which is up to 1 target character with hand cost 3 or less other than me gains anchored. The second Muna Caregiver has the same quick ability, but it's 2-2 for 1/1/1, and you may return a card from your reserve to your hand. Once again, that can happen when played from anywhere. And at dusk, you may put a card from your hand in reserve. If you do, up to 1 target character gains fleeting. The third of the uniques that they use, once again, very low cost curve, 2-1, 2-2, and this Ordis Cadet is a 2-1 for 1/0/1 in stats. And when I leave the expedition zone, if I have 1 or more boosts, create an Ordis Recruit 1/1/1 soldier token in target expedition. And then we see the same effect as before. At dusk, if I have 1 or more boosts, you may return a spell from your reserve to your hand. Very, very strong ability of recursion of spells, which is what Aphanis in its current iteration is really wanting to do. So those were our 2 winners. The next league that we wanted to look at is League Latam, which is played also on Mondays. This had 50 players in that tournament. And what was surprising here was Sharkstar 7's Tasia in Muna. So Tasia and Nara taking it out with their very much what I would call a fun deck to play. Sneezer Shrooms, Muna Caregivers, Spindle Harvesters, Thespians, Ogans, looking for ways to leverage your traditional anchored build. Muna Druid, Aloe Vera, Dracana. The one card I've seen here that I don't tend to see that often is Saskia, just a one-off Saskia there. And not only are they using the Spindle, but they've got a one-off Monolith being used. So that's very unique in what they've got. Floral Tent is also part of it. And also a fair amount of spells to be able to counter your opponent, but also be able to get more things into your reserve to be able to continuously anchor. So let's have a look at the 3 uniques that they had. The first one being a Muna Caregiver, 2-2 for 1/2/1. When played from reserve, you may put a card from your hand in reserve if you do resupply. Once again, looking for that recursion of anchoring, which is what this deck is all about. When a character also you control gains 1 or more boosts, if I have 2 or more boosts, up to 1 character with hand cost 3 or less other than me gains anchored. So we're looking at that mass anchoring effect in play here. There's also a quick ability that this Muna Caregiver does have, which is what you see in most Muna Caregivers, up to 1 target character with hand cost 3 or less other than me gains anchored. The second card that was their unique was a Spindle Harvester, 2-1 for a 1/0/0 in stats. When played from hand, I gain anchored, and when a character you control gains 1 or more boosts, if I have 2 or more boosts, up to 1 target character with hand cost 3 or less other than me gains anchored. So we're seeing that similarity here. Looking for that mass anchoring. Once you have 1 or 2 of these out, you just keep on going. And up to 1 target character with hand cost 3 or less other than me gains anchored is its quick ability. The third of the uniques, the more expensive unique, is 3 from hand, 2 from reserve for a 2/2/3 Kokoba, Legion Commander. And when another character joins your expedition, if you control 2 or more plants other than me, up to 1 target character with hand cost 3 or less other than me gains anchored. This to me is the strongest because it does not require any boosts. That takes us to our Tuesday tournaments, which was a single elimination. And this had 32 players, so a few extra players than last week. Now this is very interesting that there's only one ever winner. So we keep playing until everybody has been eliminated. And it was won by MA221. Also on a Traced and Rossum build. They also have a very similar build to what we saw beforehand. Let's just have a quick look at their uniques. So very, very similar to the Monday tournament, AWOL tournament winner. but this was piloted by MA221. Their uniques had an Ada Lovelace 2-1 for 012, and from anywhere you may put a card from your hand in reserve. If you do, I gain 1 boost. Their second one being an Anansi 3-2 for 211. When played from reserve, you may put a card from your hand in reserve. If you do, I gain 1 boost for each card in each player's reserve. He has a second from reserve ability up to 1 target character gains fleeting, and then a third ability which says when another robot joins your expedition, I gain 2 boosts. This is a massively great card. Versatile when played from reserve, but also if you have to play it from your hand and you can get another robot out, it bumps itself up, it boosts itself up severely. The third of the uniques is an Inari 3-2 for 133. Played from anywhere, you may put a card from your hand in reserve. If you do, target character gains 1 boost. That's nice in that you get to choose which character gains that boost. But it also has a quick ability of up to 1 target character gains fleeting. That takes us to the Wednesday tournaments. This is AQZ Nook, so once again, no uniques allowed in this tournament. I actually played a Nook tournament today, and one of my opponents, unfortunately, had some uniques and had to concede the game halfway through. I felt bad for them, but those are the rules of this tournament. 53 players, so a bit of a reduction. It might have to do with the summer months that we're starting to see a few less players join the ranks, but there was only 1 undefeated player, and you guessed it, it is in Trayston Rossum, GDR H1 Spam, going 6-0 in that tournament. And as you can see here, the very, very similar builds. Everyone is using Vike Energy Pioneer, everyone is using Hooked. We've got a bug fix in here, and we've got a boom, which we didn't see in the others. Now, what they do different in this tournament was that they also use the refinery. So once again, no uniques allowed, so you have to find different cards to use. And the refinery being there is just as a one-of, and only 2 Keylon cylinders, 3 Haven Bravos Bastions. This is a very unique build in that they blend a lot of their cards. There's not 3-ofs everything. There's a number of cards that have 1-ofs with the Avalanche as well. And this seemed to have worked for this on the Nook tournament. So let's have a quick look at the next tournament, which is the AQZ Championship. Happened for 71 players. Another smaller turnout than we had the prior week, and there were 3 players that actually went undefeated on 5-0. We had Izzy Lopez on Tasia and Naura, and then 2 Gulrang players, Kumogami and DSL Kioine. Apologies if I've got your name wrong. I really do. Hopefully I get to say it properly. But let's have a look at the Tasia build. So we had a second Tasia player winning a tournament. So we had it first in Latam, and now we're seeing it here in AQZ Championship Tournament. So the main things that I'm looking at here, we've got some Sap Duendes, very different, only using the Spindle, so no Bravos Bastion in there as well. Capellia's becoming the uniques, Sneezer Shrooms as normal, but we've got a few cuddly Corgis, so looking to boost your Corgis as you are anchoring or mass anchoring your cards. So let's have a look at their uniques. So the first unique was a Keylon Elemental 2-2 for 302 in stats, and when played from reserve, you may put a card from your hand in reserve, and when a character you control gains 1 or more boosts, if you control 2 or more boosted characters, up to 1 target character with hand cost 3 or less other than me gains anchored. We're going to see that again, that very similar ability that we saw in the other tournament with the winner of the Latam tournament. The second one is Capellia 3-2 for 122. When I go to reserve from the expedition zone, you may play me for free and I gain a sleep. When a character you control gains 1 or more boosts, up to 1 target character with hand cost 3 or less other than me gains anchored. So once again, that similar ability of being able to mass anchor your cards, both of which require some character gaining a boost. The third one is another Capellia of their uniques 3-2 for 122, so same stats, same cost, and it has the following: when I go to reserve from the expedition zone, you may play me for free and I gain a sleep. So exactly the same so far between the 2 Capellias. And then it says when another character joins your expedition, if you control 2 or more plants other than me, up to 2 target characters, each gain 1 boost. Now, this is different. This doesn't have the anchored. One thing that I'm interested to hear and to see is whether or not there's going to start being more of that uproar about mass anchoring like there was a few months ago. And though they weren't getting the results you saw, we're still not getting the results, but we've now had 2 TCG players win major tournaments over this last week. Let's see if those murmurs become more than just that, and whether Equinox does decide to change that, as they may still be on the watch list. I didn't see any announcement on the watch list that talked about mass anythings, but we'll see if this is still part of that. The second player to have gone undefeated using Ghoulrang and Toxin was Kumogami. And in here, what we're really seeing in these Ghoulrang builds, or this Ghoulrang build, is a balanced approach between characters, most of which have an ability of, if they don't, whether it's card draw, whether it is potential sabotage, or even sabotaging early, which is what the Order Spy does. That each one of these cards has some level of interaction. On the spells, really, it's a way of getting more and more of your tokens out cheaply, given that Ghoulrang gives you that additional boost for a more, from a Gears perspective, mobile armory, so you don't wait to the end of or till you have at least 8 tokens to be able to, 8 mana, so that you can start progressing. It allows you progress earlier. Mesektet's and Orders Carriers being played. So this is very common to the way that you see most Ghoulrang builds happen, in having both types of landmarks, though I'm seeing a few of the Ghoulrang builds just completely not even care about the Orders Carrier and just focus on the Mesektets. In terms of their uniques, they had 1 Ozma for 2/3 cost for a 1/2/2 in stats, and when played from anywhere, if you control 2 or more landmarks, draw a card, and when played from your hand, if you control 2 or more landmarks, draw a card. So you can do a double draw in the morning, when you play from your hand, and another additional draw when it's played from reserve, as long as you control landmarks. So you need to control 2 to make this work, which is probably why they're using the 6 landmarks in their build. Now, I'm interested, so they're using Conjuring Seal as the way to draw, rather than sacrificing one of their tokens. The second unique that they've got is 3/1 Fire Rabbit for 0/2/0. When played from hand, you may have me gain fleeting if you do sabotage. Otherwise, you may exhaust target card in reserve. Also, when played from hand, if your reserve is empty, sabotage, so potential double sabotage. Otherwise, you may exhaust target card in reserve. That's crazy. Double sabotage, or if you can't do that, then you can at least exhaust them. Now, when played from reserve, if your companion expedition is behind, the next permanent you play this afternoon costs 1 less. Their third unique is a Drill Mole, which I absolutely love Drill Moles, by the way. 3/4 for a 1/1/3. When played from hand, if your reserve is empty, create 2 Orders Recruit 1/1/1 soldiers in your other expedition. It's great that it's in the other, so you have still the chance to progress on the side that you play this, especially early on, while giving 4/4/4 worth of stats through those recruits in your other expedition zone. When played from reserve, you may spend 1 counter from a card you control or in your reserve if you do sabotage. Otherwise, you may exhaust target card in reserve. And also, when played from reserve, if you have 10 or more mana orbs, create 2 Orders Recruit 1/1/1 soldier tokens in your other expedition. And given it is a Drill Mole, it has its its passive ability of when another character joins your expedition, I gain 1 boost up to a maximum of 2, and that allows you to basically trigger that sabotage, especially if you've got Mesektets out, if you've got your Orders Carriers out, you'll be getting that boost enough very quickly so you can play it first thing on at the start of the day. The second of the Ghoulrangs that also went undefeated in this tournament had a very similar build, in that it focused on its Conjuring Seals, license withdrawals, teamwork training, field reinforcements, but what it chose to put in was hypothermias instead of rallying calls. So looking at ways of anchoring some of the cards that they had in play. That's very interesting. And to see why they also use the brass bug hubs as a way of being able to sabotage, as opposed to having the Orders Carrier. So very different kind of builds in terms of how they wanted to interact with their opponent. But let's have a look at their uniques. So by DSL Kioine. So the first one is a 2/2 Paper Herald, 0/1/0. When played from anywhere, if you control 3 or more characters, draw a card. And they also have an ability that says when another non-token character joins your expedition, if you control 1 or more landmarks, create an Orders Recruit soldier token in my expedition. Now, one thing to note is that their spell count is 15. Their character count is 18, so it's still lower than most other decks, but it is higher than the other Gurang and Toxin deck that we looked at, piloted by Kumagami, which had 14 characters. So an increase of 4. In order to do that, this has a similar Paper Herald effect as a quick ability, create an Orders Recruit 1/1/1 soldier token in your companion expedition. Rather than any you get to choose, this one is in your companion. The second of their uniques is a more expensive unique, actually their second and their third one. 5/5 for 5/5/5 Benzitin. And this is from anywhere. If your hero expedition is behind, up to 1 target character gains a sleep. You may have it gain 2 boosts. And when you create a token, if your companion expedition is behind, draw a card. This is great. So you can make this character fall asleep and then create a whole bunch of tokens the next day and be able to draw a card for every token you have. So one thing to be mindful of is this Kioine is looking to make sure that their companion expedition is behind. And also to make themselves fall asleep, their hero expedition must be behind. So not tied, must be behind. So they're really looking to play from behind as much as possible to be able to do this. Really, really interesting card. I don't get a chance to see something like this every day. And neither for the next one that's a unique, which is a Vishvakarma 5/6 for 2/4/4. And played from anywhere. If my expedition is behind, the next permanent you play this afternoon costs 4 less. And played from anywhere. If you control 4 or more characters, sabotage. Otherwise, you may exhaust target card in reserve. So at a bare minimum, you'll exhaust. So that if you don't have 4 or more characters, but still great stats, and it will allow you to play any one of your landmarks, the Messick Tet or the Brassbug Hive, for free when this actually comes out. Interesting build. Both of them went undefeated, which is great to see a different hero. What we're not seeing, though, is Sigismar at all in any of these tournaments going undefeated so far. Following on from that, we'll look into AWOL, the Wednesday tournament, so more catered towards the US and the Americas market, though half the players, or even more, probably come from the Europe that are staying up late to play in the tournament that's more for my time. And in this tournament, we had another Tristan Rossum go undefeated, KRA Karifu, and their build is very much the same as we've seen earlier in terms of its landmarks, 2 Keylon cylinders, 3 Haven Bravos Bastions, but they have focused to build their deck more on characters, less on spells. Only Frozen Delivery, 3 of them, and 2 hooks, and really hooked. The Frozen Deliveries are there to get something in your reserve to get that trace counter going up so you can get that additional boost. The additional card impact that you've got. Now let's have a quick look at their uniques, because they've not just that, they've added Frankenstein, they've added Gibble to basically higher cost curve that they've got. But I want to look at their uniques that they've got. So 2 Repotter Otters, 1 Tinkerbell. The first Repotter Otter is a 3/2 2/2/1, and when played from reserve, each player may put a card from their hand in reserve. And then it also has the when ability that we look for. When a card goes from your hand to or deck to reserve, create a Brassbug 2/2 robot token in your other expedition. And then we're looking at the second Repotter Otter, 3/3 for 1/3/1 in stats. Played from anywhere, each player may put a card from their hand in reserve. And when a card goes from your hand or deck to reserve, create a Brassbug 2/2 robot token in your other expedition. So this is in your other, both the same as the other one, so you're able to get some stats on both sides of the board. And this has a quick ability as well, which is you may activate the arrow or from anywhere ability of target permanent you control. The third of the uniques that they had was a simple Tinkerbell 2/2 for 3/3 in cost, and when played from anywhere, draw a card. And when I leave the expedition zone, you may put a card from your hand in reserve. If you do, sabotage. Really, really strong. I think these repotter orders are ridiculous in terms of what they can value they can give you. And the Tinkerbell itself giving you card draw, which is fantastic, and sabotage, which in a way that you want to do, because you just want to keep putting cards into your reserve. Then that was basically the end of your traditional BGA tournaments. There is one other deck that I do want to talk about, and that had to do with the Germany World Qualifier that occurred in Essen. 123 players participated. As you can see on the board, I've presented the top 16 decks, and out of those 16 decks, very surprising to see only 2 Sigismars, 1 Gulrang making it, but a lot, not surprising at all, a lot of Afanis. A lot. Almost half the decks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the top 16 decks were Afanis decks. No representation from the Muna faction at all. An Etsadi there, a Kojo there, Nobasira, and Fen and Crowbar being represented twice from the Lyra faction. What's interesting, what we didn't see there that we've been seeing a lot online is Trace and Rossum and any of the other Axiom decks. Only one of them made it into the top 16. But it was won by Nadirm, who played an Afanis and Senka deck that really, really focused on spells and recursion of spells and constantly bringing those spells back. You get cheap play. And the card that I really enjoy seeing, and I've seen a lot more people use it, is Joyride. Given you have so much in your reserve to be able to just discard an additional card from your reserve if you want to give a card extra boost, is fantastic. They're really looking to get card draw. They're really looking to wreck your game by having so much more card advantage in how they build their strategy. But I want to talk about what uniques they had and what caused a bit of an uproar in the community in terms of seeing the huge amount of cards in reserve that these players had, or this player had, and being able to constantly recoup what's in reserve. It may have been one of the reasons why this nerf or this change to Afanis has happened. So over the next 2 weeks, use as much as you can, because you will not be able to use Afanis the way you do right now. So the first one that they had as their uniques was a Spindle Harvester, 2/1 for a 1/1/0. When played from hand, I gained Anchored, and at dusk, if I have 1 or more boosts, you may return a card other than me from your reserve to your hand. Pretty simple, actually. It's not one of the more broken ones, but it is still a very strong one. And it has a quick ability of up to 1 target character gains fleeting, though I doubt you'll ever be using that. The second one was a Muna Caregiver 1/1. At dusk, you may return a spell from your reserve to your hand. And then an Izmir Stargazer with a sacrifice mechanic. So 2/2 for 1/2/2. When I'm sacrificed, you may return a spell from your reserve to your hand. And at dusk, you may return a card other than me from your reserve to your hand. I don't believe that they would have done anything about sacrifice. I don't recall seeing anything in their deck that worried about sacrifice, but that whole recursion of your spells, return a card other than me from your reserve to your hand, is there. Just really, really easy to use. You've got your sleight of hand, though they've only used 1 sleight of hand in their build. But there you go. That's it. That takes us to the end of the week. Great work for Afanis and Nadirm getting their ticket to France and to Paris for the World Championship. Congratulations to all the winners, and I am looking forward to catching up next week.